datta 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 dipam Shri Guru Datta Jai Guru Datta Guru Dipam Datta 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 dipam Shri Guru Datta Jai Guru Datta Guru Dipam Gundayanati Gutilona Velugu Dipam Velugu Koladi Vishwamelu Vinta Dipam
Gundayanati Gutilona Velugu Dipam Velugu Koladi Vishwamelu Vinta Dipam
Datta 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 dipam Shri Guru Datta Jai Guru Datta Guru Dipam
Datta 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 dipam Shri Guru Datta Jai Guru Datta Guru Dipam
Veluga Veluga Vidi Pavuchamma Papam Suda Suda Budi Dona Gunde Tapam
Veluga Veluga Vidi Pojamma Papam Suda Suda Budi Dona Gunde Tapam
Datta 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 dipam Shri Guru Datta Jai Guru Datta Guru Dipam
Datta 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 dipam Shri Guru Datta Jai Guru Datta Guru Dipam
Kurkelano Dumidattadam Dumatsudipam Maya Yamadu Chittalanu Chitsudipam
Orkelanu Dumidattadam Dumatsudipam Maya Yanadu Chittalanu Chitsudipam
There are cosmic gods, and there are our inner gods. The king himself arrived, seeing that the gods were winning. The human king arrived. The king thought, if I grow weary in battle, Shiva, the Lord of all living beings, will be by my side. The disciple struggled and struggled, practiced tapas in retreat, conquered all enemies and desires, triumphed, and arrived. Thus, Tripura Rahasya, Mahatmya Kanda. The battle of Kama and his patron deities. With mortals, with humans. Here, this battle is described over the course of 3 chapters. We will review it briefly. The most important points. These are chapters 17, 18, and also 19 is a single battle. What is it even about? Why are there 3 whole chapters about this battle? This is the battle, the struggle between the human and the divine. Moreover, let me tell you this. As a result of this battle, the gods were captured, Indra was taken prisoner, other gods were captured, and mortals were victorious. And even Kama was defeated. So in this battle, The human side prevailed, but then justice triumphed. This describes the processes that take place in the soul of a yogi, so that the sadhus who will study the text don't get complacent. In the traditions of Sanatana Dharma, it's always devas and asuras. These are those inner tendencies. But there is one way to be independent of this. It is to take the position of the highest gods. Who has seen the highest gods fighting there? The very highest ones. Very rarely. They only intervene when it is necessary to step in. Otherwise, they never fight. It happens very rarely. Mostly, they just observe and give advice. When you take the position of an observer, an advisor, then all these battles sort of play out in front of you, like a movie, like a picture. You just watch them. Yes, my inner asuras fight with my inner gods, sometimes even capturing them. But I, like a higher deity, observe without getting involved. This is the art of observing. It's an art of a sadhu.
As the battle between mortals and immortals continued, Shatrujaya, the royal princes, and their sons bravely broke into the army of the gods. They fought with weapons for a long time and began to push back the immortals. They were astonished to see the commander Sadriti, who, after the battle on the clubs, had been bound by the Lord of the gods. And even though his left hand was tied, he fought him with his right. Glory! What a hero! In such way, the royal princes praised him and began to forcefully push back the armies of the gods. Pressed by them, the immortals, unable to resist, threw down their weapons and fled, shouting, "Oh, oh!" Then Kubera, Varuna, Yama, and the king of the Gandharvas, along with Vayu and Soma, engaged them in a long and fierce battle, but were defeated and captured by the royal princes. Shatrujaya captured the Lord of Wealth, Shatruka captured Varuna, Bhima captured Chitrasena, Samaratapana captured Yama, and Varasena captured Jayanta. Virabhanu captured Vayu. The Vasus were seized by Viragraha. Vairovakrama captured the moon. Having captured all the gods along with Indra, they began to lead them away. So after capturing Indra and the others, they began to carry them away. Then Kama roared at them and drew his divine bow.
There are cosmic gods, and there are our inner gods, within us, within our consciousness, within our bodies, as parts of the cosmic gods. Since our body is the universe in miniature, and the universe outside is called the Mahabrahmanda, the great cosmic egg, and our body is called the Kshudra Brahmanda. It's like the universe in a compressed, condensed form. And just as there are cosmic gods, so too do we have our inner gods, representatives of these cosmic gods. There is such a concept as Gana or Parivara, Devata. It is the gods of the retinue, Shiva's entourage. And there are, in total, 9 groups of deities described in the Rig Veda, the helpers and entourage of Shiva. They are led by Ganesha, and in some cases by Andhaka. Gana means a crowd, a multitude, a group. And basically, there are 9 groups of such Vedic gods, or 9 Ganas. And these include the Vasus, Aditis, Rudras, Ribus, and Vishvadevas, the Marudas, the Apasvaras, and other gods as well. And all these gods were present here and fought. We talked about the Vasus last time. If the Vasus are the deities of the earth, then the Aditis are the deities of the sky. Suras call them the forefathers. These are groups of deities, the sons of Aditi. Aditi means infinity, and sons of the sage Kashyapa. And such. Samsaric, let's say, deities, they dwell in the sky, remain connected to the sun, and their leader is Agni. It is believed that they fight the Asuras and destroy the power of the Asuras. And there are 7 main cosmic deities of Aditi, led by Varuna and always accompanied by Mitra. And here is their list: Varuna, Mitra, Aryaman, Bhaga, Ansha, Daksha, and Indra. There is also an 8th, Martanda, and then Vivasvat replaced him. There is also a list of the 12 Aditis: Ansha, Aryaman, Bhaga, Daksha, Hatri, Indra, Mitra, Ravi, Savitar, Surya, Varuna, and Yama. And Vishnu is also considered one of the radiant Aditya gods in his Vamana form, since Vamana's mother is an Aditya. There are also the Ridras, and their leader is Indra. 11 Ridras, available in different variations. They are personified with the 10 winds in our body. 5 main pranas and 5 additional pranas, referred to 11 Ridras. That is, 10 Vayu in the soul. These are 11 Ridras. Therefore, when a homa or yagya is done long, it is done for 11 days, referred to 11 Ridras. Mahan, Mahatma, Mahatman, Madamon, Vishan, Hemkara, Ridadvaja, Earthvakisha, Pingalaksha, Ruchi, Shuchi, and Ridra. This is the personification of the qualities of Ridra. It is believed that Rudra emerged from the forehead of Brahma, split into 2, and then each of these 2 have split into 12, white and black. Subtle divine realities in the cosmos and subtle energies in our mind and body. That's what was fighting. And Kama, as the impulse of desire born from Lakshmi, was behind all of this.
Some got scattered, while others just fell right there. Bidaja and other gods were taken captive. The wives of the Gandharvas began to suffer in fear. Then Kama, drawing his bow to its fullest, placed arrows on it and unleashed a rain of arrows and many weapons to block the path of mortals. Then Sudriti and the others. After laying down the bound celestial beings, they all fought against the mighty Kama. The 5-year-old boy Kama fought against everyone alone. Kama answered weapon with weapon, and this truly was astonishing. The mortal gods were amazed, as each weapon was countered individually. Parrying them, he struck down each warrior one by one with sharp arrows. Sudriti and the others, struck by arrows, scattered in all directions and fought Kama with all their might, as if their strength had increased. With sharp arrows, they then attacked Kama alone. Kama deflected every arrow, hitting each one individually right in the center. And once again, a battle broke out between the armies of the gods and men. This terrible battle lasted only a muhurta. During this time, Kama showered the armies of men with a rain of arrows and scattered them, like the wind disperses clusters of clouds in the sky. Struck by Kama's rain of arrows, they could not withstand him, just as clouds cannot stand against the wind.
Kama is the offspring of Lakshmi, and Lakshmi began creation at the behest of the goddess Tripura Sundari. Lakshmi is the primordial will, and to inspire people to follow the path of the gods, she created Kama as an impulse of energy, as desire. The will that emanated from the gods became desire in the minds of people. That is what Kama is. And this desire has awakened energy. It called forth a battle because the gods, the mortal part of the soul, and the divine became entangled. This is what Kama brought about. Kama became desire. Before that, people had no desire. So, you could say their Kundalini was not awakened. They existed in equanimity. The subtle structures of their consciousness were not functioning. And that's why the gods were not satisfied. The divine part of them was asleep, but they lived that kind of life. For example, well, how can I put it? Well, like maybe primitive beings live, whose higher circuits of consciousness don't function. And in order to open these circuits of consciousness, Mother Lakshmi created Kama as the impulse of desire, so that this impulse would awaken their energy. But in the process, there was this kind of struggle between the mortal part and the immortal part. And this impulse of desire was defeated by the human part. In other words, Kama was shattered.
At this time, the steadfast Ranadhira, together with the mighty son of Sudriti, said to Shatrajaya's son, "O prince, lead your brother's army into battle against the army of the gods. Defend them from Indra and the others, and even from Pitri. As for me, I will fight Kama. Witness my strength." Having said this, he mounted his chariot, drew his great bow, and advanced toward Kama, showering him with a rain of arrows. Then Kama responded to Ranadhira's rain of arrows with his own shower of sharp arrows, but they did not reach him. And with 3 of his arrows, he struck the center of Manmatha's bow, causing the bow to fall from his hand. Seeing the bow lying on the ground, Kama praised his valor in battle, saying, well done, hero. You are worthy of respect." Thus praising him, he fitted a sharp arrow to his bow and shot it. Thus began an extremely fierce battle between the king and Kama.
In the end, the king himself arrived. Seeing that the gods were winning, the human king came. And so began the battle, the ultimate, final clash between the earthly king and Kama.
Looking at the king, the warriors, Sudriti, and the others, having recovered from their faint and come to their senses, gathered before the king. They all bowed to him, Sudriti and the rest. To the warriors, the king said, "O Sudriti, listen to my words. Are you tired? You have been fighting Kama for a long time. Now I will fight the Mahatma myself."
The king's name is Viravrata. He is not simply called by that name. Vira means spiritual hero. And Vrata, what does that mean? It means a vow, a commitment. So he embodies a vow. And Viravrata possessed a special power. He received a blessing from Shiva. Shiva told him, "Defeat Kama, and then you will come to me." So, he was not just an ordinary king, but that part of consciousness that had been tempered and had performed tapas, that was able to overcome desire in the form of Kama.
"And you will be my witnesses." Having said this, the king entered his final battle with Kama. And between them there was a battle, like the one between Vishnu and Kaitaba, with many weapons and arrows. For every weapon, the other responded with another weapon. Thus they fought, both desiring victory. Both clad in impenetrable armor, armed with unbreakable strong bows and invulnerable shields, skilled in the knowledge of archery, they fought with great strength for 3 days. On the 4th day of the fight, the great battle happened. Then all the worlds were filled with the fires from their weapons. The king then began to grow weary. As the king tired, Kama's strength only increased. Realizing he was faltering, the king quickly remembered Shankara in his mind, and the 3-eyed god handed him a trident.
So, when the king began to tire, thanks to his tapas, he was able to quickly connect with Shankara. Shiva would appear in response to his meditation. And he quickly entered meditation and received Shiva's blessing in the form of a weapon. That is, Shiva granted him a certain power. It is very important to always be able to enter into direct contact between the soul and God. If we practice well, if we perform tapasya, this becomes natural for us. To always be in a personal, direct contact with God. The natural state of awareness, natural contemplation, is always a personal, living contact between the soul and God. And when we feel that on the spiritual path our will is weakening, our tapas is fading, and we are not winning the battle with kama, then we can quickly enter into personal contact with God and receive His divine grace and mercy. And this gives us strength. But in order for us to be able to enter into such personal contact with God and always remain in it, we must possess spiritual purity. The condition for entering into contact with God is spiritual purity. We must strive to achieve a high degree of spiritual purity. What is a high degree of spiritual purity? Yes, to remain in a sattvic state of mind, or at the very least, in a calm one. Sattva begins with tranquility, calmness, serenity, peacefulness. It is from this state that it becomes possible to enter into contact with God. This is neither rajas nor tamas. It is impossible to have direct contact with God from rajas or tamas. It is impossible to have purity. Purity is the result of inner calm, inner serenity, inner peacefulness. When you can relax in this state, become aware of the non-mind. Sattva is the non-mind. Become aware of the state of space from the non-mind. And it is from here that a personal and intimate contact of the soul with God becomes possible. And for this, there is sadachara. Sadachara means proper conduct. Vigilant, restrained behavior when we control our senses. It is important to control the senses. A sadhu must not show emotions. When emotions are expressed, what does that mean? Which guna is at work? Yes, rajas destroys our sadhana. Emotions, they destroy grace, and the connection with God is broken. Personal contact with God is lost. We want to show emotions to another person so that they understand, to get through to them because they don't hear us, and we push. It is at this moment that the connection with God is broken, sattva is destroyed, and you enter the field of rajas. This is a dangerous field. That's why it's better not to engage in this. Let all the emotions that come from you be only infinite love, infinite compassion, boundless joy, and boundless equanimity. Ananda. These are the kinds of emotions that are virtuous and beneficial. All other emotions. On the contrary, maybe you'll get your point across. Maybe you'll put pressure on someone else. But at what cost? Is it worth it? At the cost of breaking your soul's personal connection with God, at the cost of losing sattva. Because at that moment, the balance of gunas in your consciousness will change. Sattva will be burned up by your emotions, and you'll have to, maybe, then spend 7 days practicing, chanting mantras, performing homas, repenting, analyzing, sitting, working on concentration, just to get back to that same balance, to return to that same sattva. All because of 5 minutes of some negative emotions. This applies to both external and internal ones. That's why we must control our external behavior through sadachara. There is also samayachara. Samayachara is the observance of internal spiritual vows and rules of samaya. It tells us how not to express rajas, tamas, or negative emotions, even internally. It's not enough to be flawless on the outside. You also have to not express them inside. That is, not to send curses to others in your mind. Evil, envy, hatred, any kind of aversion, disrespect, or dislike. This is very important. When we, as Samaya brothers and sisters, practice together, we form spiritual connections, and our spiritual progress depends on these connections. And these spiritual connections should be calm, pure, harmonious, balanced, and in general, sattvic. When we want to sum up all these words, calmness, harmony, serenity, purity, joy, love, we simply say sattva. That is, there should be sattva within us toward all Samaya brothers and sisters at the very least. Even better, if it's toward all living beings. But at the very least, toward your Samaya brothers and sisters. And there are 14 root vows of Samaya. You need to know all of them, as if memorized by heart, and be guided by them. Because we live by Samaya. Samayachara means to live according to Samaya. Outwardly, we live according to Sadachara, which includes various Shilas, Vinayas, while inwardly, we live by Samayachara. And Samayachara is actually much more important than the external because it is your inner being. Finally, when it comes to the innermost, subtlest part of the mind, there is Prityachara, selfless giving love, blessing, faith, devotion, contemplation. Everything we associate with the concept of non-dual contemplation, the one supreme contemplation. In other words, spiritual purity arises as a result of following sada, samaya, and prityacharas. It is said in the Chandrajnana Agama, knowledge without sadachara and others will not lead to perfection. Once again, knowledge without sadachara and others will not lead to perfection. That is, if our knowledge does not manifest in our behavior, in our speech, in our interactions, in our daily actions, or in our states of mind, it will not lead to perfection. It is not enough to have the right view, to have faith, or to strive for contemplation. We must constantly express these through right behavior. Because if knowledge is devoid of sada, samaya, and prityacharas, it will not lead to perfection. Knowledge endowed with behavior. This is what leads to perfection. So, when we possess sadachara and others, and have knowledge in the form of contemplation and insight, we attain spiritual purity. Thanks to this, the soul can always be in personal communion with God. We can be in sattva. And the king, possessing such spiritual purity, possessing sadachara, samaya, brishachara, and jnana, could at any moment connect with Shiva and receive his blessing.
The king took it from his quiver, like an arrow, and thought, as he held it in his hands, that this arrow was heavier and would be the main one. Where did it come from? It had never existed before. If I stand firm, then Shiva, the lord of the lineage, will be by my side for victory over Kama. Thinking this, the king then placed the arrow on the bow, shining like lightning in a cloud. Then Kama retreated to the left, disturbing the animals and birds, which took off with wild cries, raising dust on both sides.
The king thought, if I grow weary in battle, then Shiva, the Lord of all living beings, will be by my side. Now, if you remain pure, whatever you do, no matter how tired you get, Shiva, the Lord of all living beings, will always be by your side. You will always be able to stay in contact with him, to stay connected. And when we speak, contemplation, closing the circle of day and night, nididhyasana, this is about being in such awareness that Shiva is always by your side. Nididhyasana means to remember Shiva continuously so that he is always with you. This means being in a state of purity. So, closing the circle of day and night is not just about understanding, for example, how to practice Atmavichara or Sankalpa, but also about understanding how to always remain in sattva, to stay in sattva no matter what, just like the great saints of the past. It's not just about being attentive, aware, and vigilant. Many people actually practice different kinds of mindfulness, vigilance, Atmavichara, or Vipassana. But not so many can. live with Shiva by their side, constantly with God, to always remain in purity like that. That's what it means to close the circle of the day. When you practice correctly, you are in awareness and mindfulness, but also, from the moment you wake up until you fall asleep, you remain in purity. You might have dreams, some of them may be out of harmony, but during the day, you are always in purity. You are always in sattva. You are always in divyabhava. It's not like you're a Buddha during meditation, but in the kitchen you're throwing plates around. Because you're irritated, because of the weather, because someone said something to you the wrong way, or told you too late, and so on. And you find a reason. Do you understand what you're doing? You're justifying yourself. One may think, it's the weather, probably the pressure or leaden clouds. Or no, I wasn't warned that I had to. It's his fault. Actually, I'm the one who's right, but it's all him. And also the horoscope. That's another really good excuse all sadhus use it. But it's the planets. It's the planet's fault. What do I have to do with it? It's Saturn, Rahu, Ketu. Almost everyone here is into Jyotish astrology. And there are plenty of other reasons too. And you need to tell your mind, please, don't get into that stuff. Don't try to fool me. I see all your tricks. Our job isn't to look for excuses, but to work right in this very moment. How to be in sattva right now. And that's what it means to close the circle of the day. Without this, without such purity, the circle of the day won't be complete, and Shiva won't be by your side. And that's why we keep calling out to him, chanting, Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, Lord Shiva, where are your strength and support? Where is your grace? But the subscriber is unavailable. It's not working. And you'll start thinking, the mantra, for some reason, isn't working, but it used to work before. Why is that? Atmavichara doesn't bring inspiration. Why is that? Because what's missing is this element of purity. As soon as we have this component, purity and sattva, everything starts working right away. Shiva becomes available immediately. He appears.
Seeing that the circumstances had changed, Kama remembered Mother Lakshmi, and in response to his pleas, she sent messengers to earth for his protection. At that moment, the king released an arrow blazing like a flame. The arrow, visible to all the worlds and shining like the fire of destruction that burns the three worlds, struck Madana. "Oh!" the gods exclaimed when they saw the arrow hit its mark. When it reached Kama, that arrow burned up like a blade of grass in a fire. The bow, the two quivers, everything. His weapons were reduced to ashes. Kama fell lifeless to the ground, like someone who has exhausted all their good deeds and fallen from the heavens. At that moment, the messengers whom Lakshmi had sent earlier arrived, and seeing Kama fallen to the ground, they took his lifeless body and went to Padma. Then, seeing that Kama had been killed by the king, Sudriti and all the others were overjoyed at the fall of their great enemy. The warriors struck the victory drums. Everyone filled with joy came together as one, like a swelling ocean, and rushed to the king to express their love for him. Some bowed to him, some hugged him, some looked at him with admiration, and some spoke to him. Thus the army, overwhelmed with joy, expressed its delight. The Lord of Men then spoke about the Sudriti in a manner appropriate to the time. "O Sudriti, gather the 4 kinds of troops. Go to the city, first you and then the army. Prepare medicine for those wounded by weapons, perform funeral rites for the fallen, and burn the rest, those struck in the back, together with the animals." Thus, having given his orders, the lord of the land climbed onto his chariot.
Those struck in the back are the ones who ran away. No one would honor those who showed cowardice, together with the animals. The faith of the brother was able to defeat Kama because he was blessed by Shiva himself. and it was Shiva's will that Kama be struck down, no matter how strong and powerful Kama was. What is expressed as divine will in the higher realms inevitably comes to pass on earth. Nothing can change or cancel it unless intervenes an even higher, greater divine will. Sometimes there were events when even a human could intervene in the divine plan and seemingly overturn the divine will. But this did not happen through the manifestation of human ego or human will. But thanks to tapas, righteousness, and purity, such a person would cease to be merely human, and through him would act in even a higher divine will. Then it could override the divine will that had set the order of actions on earth. There was such a case with Anasia, and there was such a case with the wife of a Brahmin, who made the sun stop setting down in regard with Anasia. This story is well known to all of you. Sometimes such cases did happen. There was even such a case with the Mahasiddha Varupa, who drank wine in a tavern. And when he had drunk a lot of wine and it was time to leave, as we would say now, the bartender asked him to settle the bill. He said, "I leave the sun as collateral, and the king will pay from the royal treasury." And he left. And when the sun didn't set for 3 days, everyone was alarmed. It kept circling in the sky, and the king started to investigate. It turned out that this man had left the sun as collateral and asked the king to pay the bill. The king immediately paid the debt and ordered that Varupa be found. Varupa was not an ordinary person. This was his play, a divine Leela. He even managed to influence Suryadeva, so that Suryadeva changed his decision. That is, Varupa was Shiva himself, incarnated in an illusory body. This means that sometimes a person can change the divine will. But in that case, he must cease to be just a person and must become a conduit for an even greater, higher divine will. That is exactly what happened in this case. A mortal could not have defeated Kama unless he was an instrument or embodiment of the divine Shiva's will. Shiva acted as the regulating force that subdued Kama as desire, which had permeated the world of humans.
At that time, generals and warriors, commanders and lords of commanders, seated on various chariots and holding weapons taken from Indra and other gods, surrounded the lord of the land as they entered the city. Praised by the entire army and the charioteers, the lord of the land, radiant with glory, entered the city. Hearing of the lord of the land's victory, the advisors quickly decorated the city and filled it with loud cries of triumph. Vardhana, the chief advisor, sent out many swift messengers to announce the king's victory among relatives and friends, setting up numerous decorated arches, pavilions made of betel trees, and statues along the royal roads, holding the lamps. He prepared many different offerings in the temples, especially for the family guru, Chandra Maleshwara. Beautiful women, adorned and dressed up in silk, carried trays of rice. Others carried fruits and vessels. Some brought various vessels decorated with lamps for offerings. Vidyapati, the family guru, together with Brahmins skilled in knowledge, prepared offerings for the victorious Abhisheka according to the proper rites.
After the war, it was traditional for the Brahmins to perform a samskara, which purified the sins of war and, so to speak, secured its fruits and results. It is the Abhisheka, ritual washing of statues. And the monarch, by going through the Abhisheka ceremony, was cleansed of sins. Question?
So, could we consider Viravrata as a Hampura, purified Hampura that has realized its source? Is it right?
Yes, which established a connection and devotion to the source, and subordinated itself to the source in the process of tapas.
And victory over Kama is, in this case, the acquired true Vairagya, that is true detachment?
Yes, the ability to subdue desire. If Shiva is on your side, your tapas is always successful and you subdue desire. To subdue desire, willpower alone is not enough. You need to enlist Shiva's grace so that your will resonates with Shiva's will, so that you carry out Shiva's will. Then desire doesn't stand a chance.
Having prepared everything, the Vidyapati, along with many advisors led by Vardhana, mounted the chariot and left the city together with the Brahmins. Vardhana mounted his horse. The other advisors mounted their elephants and horses, and gradually everyone exited the city gates. At that moment, the king arrived at the city, seated on a decorated white elephant named Kularatna, descended from the lineage of Airavata. Shatrujaya and his other sons and grandsons each rode the finest elephants and followed the king. Ranadhira, riding in a chariot, went ahead of the king. Carrying out the command of King Sudridi, he rode on an elephant, marched behind with the army, holding a mace in his hands and leading captive gods and others. At the approach to the city gates, the king saw the guru. Dismounting from the elephant, he approached Vidyapati. Ranadhira and the royal sons all fell silent and, following the king, got down from their chariots to behold the guru. The king, having approached the guru, bowed his head at his feet. Shatrujaya and the others also bowed to the great guru. Vidyapati is a connoisseur of all knowledge. Blessing the Lord of Men, he said, "O king, this hour is inauspicious for entering. Rest nearby and come to the city at the next auspicious hour." Hearing this, the Lord of Men bowed and said, "So be it." The king, dismounting from his chariot, settled under the shade of a tree on a beautiful seat. By his command, the Lord of the Earth sat down nearby. Shatrujaya and all the others also sat down as instructed by the guru. Then Vidyapati saw celestial beings riding in a chariot. Seeing them, he asked the Lord of Men, "Who are these captives?" Hearing the guru's words, the Lord of the Earth, folding his hands, said, "These are Shakra and the other gods who were on the enemy's side. In the battle with Sudridi and the others, they were defeated and are now held captive."
So, what does that mean, the gods who sided with the enemy, that is, on Kama's side, and then were captured by Vairavata?
I think that when you're wrapped up in such refined desires, such as if divine ones like, "I'll build myself a palace," or "I'll start a company, make some exquisite movie," and when you realize it's all pointless, it turns out you enter such a certain state.
Yes, some state of detachment.
Yeah, maybe even despair.
Okay, and what else?
Well, basically, is it correct that it is an awareness of the futility of any sensual desires, any pursuit of pleasure from sensory perception or from the mind? In other words, from anything external. That is, any pleasure that's conditioned by something external, it is. To put it mildly, it's harmful when it is realized, and that's exactly how these gods are captivated. In other words, they no longer have power over the soul, over Jiva in this case.
All right, so what happens to any yogi, a beginner, when he performs tapas? He is a true warrior at this time, a great hero who has taken a vow, and he fights. Whom does he defeat? He must conquer desire, whether it's the desire for the external world, lust, any kind of egoistic desire, attachment, or the urge to gratify the mind. At the very least, he must overcome these. If he doesn't win, if he doesn't tear his consciousness free, if he doesn't emerge from this battle, if he doesn't make himself independent in detachment, then there is no progress for him on the spiritual path. But in the process, if he acts unskillfully, he also ends up capturing the gods, because they were fighting on his side. They were right there with him. That is, these are subtle energies, the sense organs. Each deity is connected to a specific sense organ. Smell, sound, hearing, scent, touch. Indra is the deity of the mind, and so on. He also binds them and takes them captive. In other words, he deprives them of their power and doesn't let them tempt him with his strong will. And Viravrata is the embodiment of such a strong will of the yogi, blessed by the divine Shiva. But when the guru came to this battle, so what does it mean that Viravrata met the guru? So it is the disciple who struggled and struggled, did tapasya in retreat, defeated all his enemies, and conquered desire, and then he came. But the guru observes all this. It's like the disciple has frozen his feelings too much. His mind isn't working. He's focused and contemplative, but somehow not very flexible, you could say. His Indra is in captivity. Indra being in captivity means the mind isn't functioning properly. He doesn't use discriminating wisdom. The other gods are bound, which means that he doesn't feel beauty, energy, sound, color, or smell. His senses are frozen, which means his practice can go astray. And then the guru tells him it's not right to keep the gods in captivity. You've conquered Kama, that's good, but you need to release the gods.
Hearing the king say this, the wise Vidyapati, thinking it was inappropriate, spoke to the lord of the land. O king, listen to what I have to say to you. This is not appropriate for you.
In other words, the guru tells the disciple, this is not appropriate for you. That is, contemplation is a bit different. In Raja Yoga, this is possible, but when we talk about Sahaja Sthiti, natural awareness, our mind works, our sense organs work.
These are gods who must be honored by us for the benefit of mortals, and for this reason, they are not equal to humans. Release them quickly, pray to them, and worship them. Hearing these words from the guru, the king looked at Sudriti. Sudriti, having resolved to serve the Lord of Men and having freed the gods, brought them with reverence to the king. Looking at Indra and the others, the Lord of Men immediately rose, and bowing to each in turn, honored Shakra and the other gods, as well as their seats, and so on. One by one, after honoring the gods and offering them his kingdom, treasury, chariot, sons, wives, and all that he had, he said, "Forgive me for what I did unknowingly." Seeing the king's goodwill, Indra and the other gods spoke auspicious words, fitting for the occasion. Happy you are, O best of kings, to have such devotion to your guru. How could good fortune ever abandon someone with such devotion? Indeed, you shall obtain everything you desire. As for us, we wish to return to the heavens. Having said this, Shakra and the other gods vanished, and the king, following the guru's command, returned to the city. Thus ends chapter 20 of Mahatmya Kanda in the Tripura Rahasya.
Shri Guru Datta, Jai Guru Datta, Guru Deepam. Devo Jalata Terasukone Arti Deepam. Hridaya Mandu Pati Nirupu Bhakti Deepam. Devo Jalata Terasukone Arti Deepam. Hridaya Mandu Pati Nirupu Bhakti Deepam. Datta 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 Deepam. Shri Guru Datta, Jai Guru Datta, Guru Deepam. Datta 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 Deepam. Shri Guru Datta, Jai Guru Datta, Guru Deepam. Veda Shikhayavatiyayena Vimala Deepam. Sachidananda Bodha Taila Mayana Deepam. Veda Shikhayavatiyayena Vimala Deepam. Sachidananda Bodha Taila Mayana Deepam. Datta 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 Deepam. Shri Guru Datta, Jai Guru Datta, Guru Deepam. Datta 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 Deepam. Shri Guru Datta, Jai Guru Datta, Guru Deepam. Datta 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 Deepam. Shri Guru Datta, Jai Guru Datta, Guru Deepam. Datta 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 Deepam. Shri Guru Datta, Jai Guru Datta, Guru Deepam.
Datta